Welcome to the USA, where everyone needs a gimmick. This video has been a long time coming, and it's the perfect one to come back to. Now, if anyone knows me, really knows me, they know I love cartoons. I really love cartoons. Since I was a kid, with the shenanigans of Ed, Edd and Eddy, or the story of Kids Next Door, or the perfection of Avatar: The Last Airbender, they show worlds in a new light that reality just can't show. It's one of the reasons I chose film and storytelling as my vocation. One of my first videos I ever made was about cartoons, and I think the reason why was because I wished I had more of a life like they had. To this day, animation holds a place in my heart more than any other form of media, which will have a lot of meaning when I say that Steven Universe is such an amazing cartoon that blends so many elements of story, music, animation, and time to create the most amazing characters. It never fails to surprise, which I think is the perfect tagline of this video. Steven Universe, how to subvert expectations. And if you don't want to be spoiled, just skip to this time so you can get my review without being spoiled. Now, there's been a lot of controversy around the phrase subverting expectations, ever since the even more controversial finale of Game of Thrones. You'll only understand if you've seen the show, but to recap, in the least spoiler-filled way I can, Game of Thrones ended with unwrapped storylines and in a very dissatisfactory way for fans who have slugged through years of pain and emotional turmoil. Also, the writers could subvert what the fans expected or wanted. No, maybe that's the case, or maybe it's not, but a lot of movies and TV shows have been trying to do this for a while now. Similarly, The Last Jedi has also split fans in two. So what did these franchises do wrong? You could argue that they did nothing wrong, but for sake of debate, let's hash it out. The Last Jedi and Game of Thrones, in essence, screwed up by spitting in the face of everything that came before it. The Last Jedi destroyed the mystery box that J.J. Abrams set up in the first film. It added a new character with no development or history, while sidelining others, and also changing personalities. It wanted so hard to distance itself from the franchise that was beloved, which I don't blame them for trying something new, but rather for how it made the fans feel, that they wasted their time on a franchise that was taking shots at itself, making fun of the thing these fans love. I myself personally have no issues with the character of Rey or any of the other female characters. The only issues I had with the series was that they weren't consistent. They didn't stick to an overall theme of the movies, and each one seemed like a building block of its own making. Rise of Skywalker was overhauled into cleanup duty for The Last Jedi, and The Last Jedi just wanted to be itself, which completely understand. But as a trilogy, which the franchise is known for, it does not congeal well. Game of Thrones is very similar, throwing out a plot point that was built over the entire series halfway through the last season like it didn't matter, trying to pick the most outrageous ending just to make sure that no one guessed it without stopping to think if it makes sense or if it satisfies. Which again, you can argue that not everything has to be a happy or satisfactory conclusion. Which you're right, but if something lasts nearly 10 years, or even 5, or in Star Wars' case 40 years, then it should end with a satisfying conclusion. A thank you to the fans. My own opinion, of course. But if it doesn't, then it feels like the fans don't matter, or that they have wasted their time. Art doesn't always need a meaning. Sometimes you just need to make the audience feel good. Make them happy. Make them know that their time was not wasted.
Art doesn't always need a reason, Pearl. Sometimes it's just gotta make the audience happy. That's why you always end on a joke.
Of course, fans shouldn't have all of the power, especially when it's possible that the fan reaction kept us from Darth Jar Jar. But they should be a factor if they're faithful enough to keep on the wagon. Cartoons are a rarity to get a huge fan base across major groups. Adults being one of the most hardest to reach in that. Not trying to be negative, it's just true. For some reason, a cartoon or animation in general has been made to be seen as for children, instead of just another way to tell your story. Which is crazy to me, especially with the lack of limitations with what you can do with it. Adults who watch cartoons are told to grow up, which is annoying when the cartoons have been some of the most mature, genuine, and overall nicest forms of media. Almost as if society is trying to say that you can't be an adult unless you give up everything fun and nice. On a personal note, I stopped watching anime for a very long time. I just feel like I'm aging out of it. I still love anime, but it feels like I'm getting pressure from the world around me that I shouldn't be watching it. Like it's no longer my time, even though there's so many different good and fantastic animes. My Hero Academia I've been pushed to watch, as well as Code Geass or A Silent Voice. All fantastic forms of writing and entertainment, but because of what it represents in society, I have felt like I shouldn't go and watch it, like I'm not allowed anymore. And no one's physically coming out of the woodwork to tell me this, it just feels that way. It just feels like I'm not allowed to, and that's something I've been fighting against. But I digress, that's for a different video. Steven Universe is really great at surprising, and pretty much everything else. From the beginning of the show, it puts us in a place different than most cartoons. We think from the first episode that the show is going to be about Steven figuring out his powers, and for a bit it is, but it wraps that up relatively easily and quicker than you'd think. With help from Uncle Grandpa, no less. Yes, it is canon. You can't tell me it's not, especially because after that episode, Steven has no problem using his shield. From the beginning of the series, it seemed to start like a shonen anime might, based on the premise of Steven training and fighting bigger and more powerful foes each arc, while trying to prove himself to his family after feeling patronized by them. But as the show continues, it develops and changes with each episode. We can see the changes everywhere, even with tiny details. For example, in the first intro, Steven has his hair tousled by Garnet and he doesn't like that. He looks annoyed, clearly showing he doesn't want to feel or be treated like a useless kid to the gems. But in the second intro, Steven has his hair tousled by all of the gems, and he looks so happy and grateful to have their love and affection. It's a small detail, but it shows how the show has changed from him trying to prove himself to understanding that the reason the gems treat him that way is because they love him so much. At one point, it seems that Peridot is going to be the weekly bad guy that keeps coming back to bug him, but that gets figured out too, and I know what you're thinking. That sounds more like bad weekly writing than a planned thing. And maybe you're right, but Steven Universe lets itself evolve rather than stay put in a series of tropes or its own premise. I think the closest indication of this is in Full Disclosure, the first episode of Season 2. Steven is trying to avoid Connie because he's afraid of her getting hurt because of him. In this scene, she's trying to reach him because she's worried like a good friend should be. He tells her that he doesn't want to be friends with them, and then she says,
"But I won't believe it until you say it to my face."
We see Steven climb to the top of some debris and look all stoic before jumping down. Here we know what should happen. He tells her he doesn't want to be friends with her, which will lead to the season's arc between these two. And why shouldn't it be? This whole episode has built it up this way. But then we see Steven crying. He doesn't break his character. He's a child who loves Connie and doesn't want her to leave him. Of course not. He's selfish. He wants her there even if it might get her hurt, because he loves her. Admittedly, when watching the episode, could feel like more of a recap, but I think it embodies what the show is. Other tropes we'd expect to see in a show like this are just void, like Steven going to school because he has to, or the government meddling with the gems. I swear I expected that episode to show up, but it never did, which relieved me so much. The episode Rose's Room made the audience think Steven was going to admit feelings for Connie, when in actuality he felt guilty for not telling her he liked the ending she hated of the book series they both read.
Tell her, Steven. Tell her!
I like the ending of the book!
In the episode The Test is another example of subversion, as we see Steven figuring out that the test he had was rigged, and at first he's really upset and angry, but then he realizes that the test is more for them than himself. They don't know how to keep Steven's confidence from lowering, but they also don't want him getting hurt, so they make a test that is impossible to lose, so Steven can feel amazing. When he learns this, he lets his anger fall away, and he lets the gems have that win, because he just wants them to be happy. The show is filled with moments that you probably wouldn't have in any other cartoon, especially for the years that Steven Universe started. Like in Winter Forecast, at the end of the episode, there's no quip, no explosion, and no dialogue. Just Steven and Connie taking a moment in the night to enjoy the falling snow from the blizzard. Or when in Keystone, after Pearl and Garnet get into a fight, Sapphire says that she keeps looking into the future when it's all over and forgets to feel the present more. This is a really good way to look at it from both the characters and the audience perspective. As an audience, we know the fight will pass, so why should we care? Sapphire's realization is why we should care, to be in the present, and understand what's happening now rather than what will happen.
I keep looking into the future when all of this has already been solved, as if it doesn't matter how you feel in the present. No wonder you think I don't care!
The show's side characters are also different than what you might expect. Characters you'd think would be one way are rarely what you think they are. First time meeting the mayor's son, or these other quote-unquote cool kids, you'd expect them to be bullies or think they're better than Steven, because that's what we've seen in cartoons for years. Totally Spies, Kim Possible, Doug, Billy and Mandy, even new shows like Star vs. the Forces of Evil. But these guys aren't. They love Steven, and you don't feel like they're just humoring him. They look and feel genuine when they're talking to him. Even the actual bully-type characters of the show get to air out their grievances of their own characterization. Lars being an awkward, insecure person just trying to fit in while trying not to fit in. And Kevin, who I don't condone, is honestly trying his best to be a friend, but is too arrogant to realize that's not how you do it.
Hey everybody, are you having fun? Yeah! Liars!
The liars bit! I love that. No one is purely evil or just mean, except for maybe Onion, which even then I have to admit isn't true. I just dislike him so much. As for the situation we aren't used to, the family dynamic is very different. 3 moms and a very, very caring, lovely dad. I love you, Greg Universe. Maybe it's just me, but in the cartoons I've seen, there has always been a weird dynamic between the parents. Either the dad or mom are very loving to the child while the child doesn't want it. Number 1, you don't deserve him. Or the child isn't getting much love from the parents, or it's too much tough love. Life as a Teenage Robot, Fairly Odd Parents, Star Butterfly. If they're even there at all. But here, Steven and Greg absolutely love each other. There's no bickering or a parent being the tough one, which I guess you might think that from Pearl, but they all make it very clear that they love Steven with all their heart, and this is how a family is, or should be.
Why don't we all marry each other? Ta-da! And if that's not human enough for you, we can throw in a little being born and some dying.
Breaking another trope that we're so used to in most cartoons and TV shows and movies, the build-up. Let's look at Alexandrite, the second most powerful fusion in the show. It combines Garnet, Pearl, and Amethyst. And how do they make their debut?
We've been waiting for nearly 20 minutes.
Hi, Connie! Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Maheshwaran!
Hi.
By coming to dinner with Connie's parents. It's so fantastically beautiful, it hurts. It shows imperfections in its most confident, smartest, strongest, and carefree characters. Pearl, Amethyst, Garnet, and especially Rose. From the beginning of the show, Rose was always this larger-than-life character, overcasting Steven with a shadow of the same size, and that causes lots of turmoil for every single character involved. Pearl, who was in love with her. Greg, who was the same. Garnet, who was inspired by her. And Amethyst, who was her friend. Steven saw Rose as this perfect person, who led a rebellion against tyranny, who was nothing but kind and honest, someone with no flaws, and that put a lot of pressure on Steven.
I will fight to be everything that everybody wants me to be when I'm grown.
That was everything he knew about her. But I'll repeat spoilers for this part because it's very, very, very spoilery. Spoilery. Rose wasn't a good person. She wasn't anything near perfect. In her defense, I don't think that she wanted to be seen that way, but her legend lived on like that. She was very dishonest. She didn't fight Pink Diamond, she was Pink Diamond. And she faked her own death, which led the diamonds to obliterate almost all of the original crystal gems. I'm not sure if this is necessarily true, but she may have led Pearl on. Unless she's that oblivious to Pearl being gaga over her. Rose threw people away that she felt she had outgrown, or people she thought were beneath them. And worse, she forgot them. Which is another thing I think the writers did so well. For a long time, I think maybe even since the show brought up the idea of the diamonds, that the biggest theory was that Rose was Pink Diamond, which turned out to be true. But that's where the writers did good. They stuck to their guns, and didn't worry about changing the story for a sneaky surprise. Which led to a much more satisfying conclusion, narratively and faithfully.
We didn't fuse.
What? You can't fuse. You're a human.
I know! That's the problem! I'm just a human!
That's not a problem. I love humans. You're all so funny.
Eventually, some of these revolve into their own tropes, like Steven turning every bad guy that comes his way into an ally. It happens, but every one of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man villains killed themselves, so bite me. But Steven Universe is also aware of these tropes and makes fun of them all the time throughout the show. That being said, people criticize the show for saying you have to forgive your abusers or forgive everyone, but that's not true. The show's main lesson throughout and echoed in the last episode, Change Your Mind, is that you can change. People make bad decisions that hurt people. You can't change that. Sometimes you're a bad person, but the beauty of it is that you take these moments in your life and you learn from them to be a better person. No one is innately evil. No one. And if a character is written that way, then that is bad writing. Instead, these are characters who think what they're doing is good, or at least to them is normalized. And Steven doesn't force them to change or fight. All he does is offer a conversation to talk about what is wrong and work it out. It's not about forgiving someone who's wronged you. It's about understanding.
So you guys were never able to fuse?
No, but that wasn't as important as talking to each other.
Getting ahead of myself, I guess, but you can't talk about Steven Universe without the constant negative talk that is said about the show. And instead of going fully into it, because it's honestly all too negative for my taste, yes, the show's fandom is monstrous. They can be rabid and feral, which causes everyone to hate the show rather than the product. That being said, there's not a fandom yet that isn't the same way, with something as immensely popular as Steven Universe. That's why everyone hates Homestuck or Five Nights at Freddy's, which are both pieces of the most innovative forms of media. An interactive webcomic that goes into meta-narrative and spans over thousands of pages building universes within its own structure, and a simple point-of-view video game where the goal is to survive in one room while checking security cameras sparsely in order to keep the power on and avoid murderous animatronics at a pizza restaurant for children. Those are such creative concepts, but we label them as cringe. Why? Because kids like them. Or people got really into it. And that to me is batshit. We are punishing people for enjoying something so much, which pushes a reality where you aren't supposed to enjoy something quote-unquote too much. Again, for another video, but man, I miss playing Five Nights at Freddy's. But people have ruined it for me by labeling it as bad because it's popular. It happens with everything. Rick and Morty, Frozen, My Little Pony, and the fact that I just said My Little Pony right there might have set some of you off. But the show, from what I have been told, has really great writing, twists, and character development. But I wouldn't know, because anytime I see the letters MLP together, I get visions of the internet manifested to collectively swarm me with insults or raids. To be fair, bronies have probably the worst true stories about them, but that fits my point that the fandom shouldn't define the show. I don't care if it's supposed to be for kids, or not. If it's a good thing, I want to see it. There's not some rule that says when you get older you can't enjoy fun, colorful things anymore, even though people like to think there is. Rian Johnson said he only watches things to be surprised, and that's what he was clearly trying to do with The Last Jedi. A lot of people have this mentality with media, that they only want to be surprised, which I suppose can be fine, but the problem with that way of thinking is that you then don't really leave room to enjoy the characters themselves or their arcs, which I would hazard a guess is why a lot of people don't enjoy shows or movies like Steven Universe, a very strict, character-driven show, which seems to be a common thing people don't like. Pick a Steven Universe rant video and they're gonna say something along the lines of, "It's boring to focus on Beach City," when you got a galactic empire out there. But that's where they don't understand the show or don't like the characters. Again, I'm not gonna speak in black and white. Maybe people don't like the show for other reasons. I don't think it's completely the LGBT representation or acceptance, even though that definitely can be, and is a factor. And you can't say otherwise judging on the insults slung at the show alone. But it could also be the hiatuses in between episodes, which was a major factor for a lot of people. Or they don't like the music. As unlikely as that should be. But one answer I won't accept is that it's too positive. That's not a criticism, it's a preference. A bad one. But if you want a show filled with misery, with a sad main character who faces hardship and mean-spirited side characters making fun of them all the time, go check out any of the other shows on the screen. There's plenty of them. For example, I was on Twitter the other day and people were getting mad about Phineas being too nice. How he originally was kind of a shithead in the first season, people wanted him more because he was, quote-unquote, more interesting to be a dick. I don't know why everyone has this obsession with really mean characters. It's not fun. You can still have a very good character with someone who's nice. A lot of people don't understand that. I don't know why. They seem to resonate people doing bad things and breaking the rules as relatable, but also there's people in the world who don't do that, and are nice, and are also real people. Which actually shows you how much negativity people face on a daily basis. Food for thought, I guess. But a lot of the time, people's comments are usually,
Who wants to watch a cartoon about people crying?
I do.
there are inconsistencies and flaws, like with everything. Sometimes the characters aren't the same size, or plot holes, like when Steven was afraid of falling, even though he had floating powers.
Floating? I forget to use that half the time. And the rest of the time, my powers aren't even guaranteed to work.
Even though technically it's tied to his emotions, and it's very hard to switch emotions quickly. While they have those inconsistencies, they also make up for it with other consistencies. Like when Steven broke this frame in episode 2, just to show up 42 episodes later. Or when Lapis thanks Steven for healing her, and he says, "No prob, Bob." She corrects him, and then many episodes later, she changes her human name to Bob. Or when Steven reflectively pulled out his bubble when he saw Hologram Pearl again, because he was remembering last time he dealt with her. When Greg plays an acoustic version of Stronger Than You at Garnet's wedding, or my favorite being the simple gesture Steven and Lars have for each other to show they care.
Yeah!
Point is, Steven Universe subverts expectations in a satisfactory and loving way. It shows that there's a possibility for a more positive world out there. People may not like its positive always outlook, but what's wrong with some more positivity in the world? Especially when we have all the bad to balance it out. That's what the show has. Balance. It doesn't go out of its way to change something to make it surprising. It does it by its own, including the overwhelming positivity. Because of that vibe, when something bad or negative happens, we really feel it. Right where it hurts. For better or for worse. Despite its inconsistency in animation or certain plot points, Steven Universe is a cartoon that learned to evolve early. Steven Universe is just so warming to even the iciest of personalities, and it proves that with each episode. It shows that someone's life doesn't have to be all problems and hardships to be a great story. It teaches subtle and life-changing morals. It teaches that you need to communicate. Some things in your past are hard to look back at, but you need to go through the memories to clean up. You don't have to fight all the time. Trauma doesn't make you who you are, it's the lessons you learn from them. To love those who love you, to love the world you were born into, to love being happy and try to help, to love everyone, including yourself. It teaches that if we wanted, we could build a more positive world realistically, and there's nothing wrong with solutions without problems or interests without meaning. In essence, Steven Universe is a show about family, love, how to evolve, and learning to communicate through it all. A show filled with beauty, laughter, and of course, music. The details that matter are put together to tell the story of change through compromise and peace instead of continuous war and glory, reinvention, fusion, freedom, and our attention. Which you have, Steven Universe. And if you don't like Steven Universe because of the fandom or what you've heard, I'd recommend giving it a try. Something that can make you smile. And you might even love it too, if you just change your mind.
I don't need you to respect me, I respect me. I don't need you to love me, I love me. But I want you to know you could know me if you change your mind. If you change your mind. If you change your mind. Change your mind.
Thank you for watching to the very end. I very much appreciate it. I know I don't post that often, but when I do, it's about stuff that I really care about. And if you'd like me to continue making videos like this, please leave a like or a comment, share, subscribe, and that'll tell me that I should continue doing stuff like this. Also, if you're interested, I have a podcast. It's D&D based. It's an epic. I put so much work into it. It's on Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, and so much more. It's called Eldritch Journeys. You can follow us on Twitter, and we have a Facebook page. If you want to listen to a trailer and see if you like it, then please go ahead. I'd appreciate it. And again, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and clear your schedules, gentlemen.